Welcome everyone. This is Yvonne Davis and David Steele. We are accredited facilitators with Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network, and you are joining us for Unleash Your Creativity, a blending of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron and Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. So we are in week 7, and today we're going to talk about risk. And so I'm assuming you have followed along, so you know what we discussed before this and why risk is so important. It's because it is the antidote to our feelings of fear, perfectionism, jealousy. When we're coming from that place of fear and scarcity, just got to take a risk.
Well, if you're afraid, how the hell are you going to take a risk?
I know, that's a good question. So that is why we are going to talk about archetypes.
That's why I let her talk first.
So I can make a fool of myself and you can stay safe, right?
And rescue you and be the hero. Huh?
Okay. All right, so...
so you better screw up so I can rescue you.
You can jump in anytime. So... I guess for me, it's like I'm just a little bit stumbling over my words because it feels like it's a little bit difficult to explain. I mean, like in my head, I totally get it, but in terms of trying to verbalize, it's a little bit challenging. When I'm talking about archetypes, there are all kinds of archetypes, but I'm talking about empowering archetypes, such as, like the hero's journey. That is the hero with 1,000 faces. That is probably the most universal archetype, is the hero and the hero's journey. So that's the archetype that I'm talking about, is how to embody the energy and the consciousness of the hero and the hero's journey. Because I think that's what gives us the courage to take risks.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I want to back up and then swing around and then maybe do a somersault and then re-engage with what you just said.
Okay.
So this section is about connection. When to keep ourselves safe, we build a barrier between us and the world. And that barrier can keep it safe, but it also prevents us from connecting. Mm-hmm. So when we connect, and especially when we connect deeply, there's risk involved. So learning how to take risks is absolutely critical to connection. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason we want connection is we want to have interaction with mystery. I don't know what you're going to say next. We have conversations about stuff that aren't, where there's a stimulation, rejuvenation that happens because I can't anticipate it all. That's really critical. And when we're totally safe behind our barriers, we tend to feel lonely because we're holding the world at bay. We don't want to let the unknown in. Mm-hmm. So to have a deeply connected and fulfilling, rich life, learning how to take risks, learning how to be vulnerable is an essential skill. Am I doing okay so far?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if we can't have if this persona, this barrier between us and the world that we create, this image that we project to people so that we'll be accepted, if we can no longer use that to protect us, and yet we don't want to be like totally open and flailing and like, hurt me, then that's where archetype comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because archetype can be a filter, can be a barrier that's more porous than the individual persona.
Mm-hmm.
We identify with whatever the archetype is, like you were into Diana for a while, Artemis as an archetype.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of risk and uncertainty, that still brings a coherence. And in a way, it's like trotting a path that someone maybe has already mapped out a little bit. You know, maybe we're making fresh footprints on the beach or in the snow. But the archetype is kind of like the satellite view or the topo map of the terrain we're going through. Mm-hmm. So it gives us some reassurance and guidance. Mm-hmm. And also, it gives us a sense of participation in something that's larger than just my small individual self. Mm-hmm. So the archetype is very beneficial in that regard. So I'm going to reach across, I'm going to adjust the lighting here. The lighting has been adjusted. Okay. So to me, there's this upliftingness when we identify with an archetype that takes us out of ourselves while still being anchored in who we are. That is enriching, and it's protective at the same time that we take risk. Does that all make sense?
Yeah. So I'm also thinking we'll need to give people concrete examples, because especially for people who aren't familiar with archetypes, or the archetypal level of consciousness. So I could go there, but I'm just checking in to see if there's anything else you wanted to add.
No.
Okay. So an archetype is, you know, David did a good job with describing archetypes. I'm going to add another perspective. So it's sort of like, well, if you think about like a tree, we all know what a tree is, and there's a form, even though they're all different kinds of ways that you could, like, trees can, you know, express themselves. So there's the form of tree. We know what a tree is, but then there are all different kinds of trees. You know, tall trees, short trees, fat trees, bushy trees, all kinds of trees, colorful trees, green trees. So, but we always know what a tree is. So archetypes are similar to that in the sense that it's kind of like the form, the energy, and then it can express itself in all different kinds of ways. So the hero is a good example. I think that's why Joseph Campbell used the term the hero with 1,000 faces, because it's the form, the heroic form, that can take many, many different faces. So when we think about an archetype, you can think either just the general idea of a hero, or you can think of something mythical or fictional, or someone real. So for example, George Washington is an archetype of a leader. Like there's the story of when he said, "I cannot tell a lie." And so that's an archetype, or an archetype of an inventor or a scientist like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein. Those are also an archetype. And so you, in a way, when you're looking for an archetype to embody, you want to think about what energy, what qualities are you really longing to incarnate and embody. So as an example, when I was thinking about myself, when I have been having challenging experiences lately, I thought of some fictional characters, And one that was really alive for me recently was the female character in the movie Arrival. And her name is Dr. Louise Banks. So the character really impressed me. She's very strong. She's very independent. She's very intelligent and creative and courageous and disciplined and studious. And there were just so many qualities about her that really appealed to me. So that was the archetype that I chose. And I don't even know if, like, there's not a specific name, you know, in other words, she's not necessarily, like, I wouldn't just define her as a leader or as an intellectual. So it's hard. I couldn't quite, she's a professor, that's her job, but it's like there wasn't really one word that worked.
So I would say maybe, how about the courageous bearer of truth?
Yeah, that's good.
That would be her archetype,
Yeah.
because there was all this stuff stacked against her, but she had the courage to bring the truth to people who didn't necessarily want to hear it.
Yes. Yes.
That's a very classic archetype.
Yes.
You know, the power of archetypes also is expressed, you know, the original Star Wars series, and I'm talking about the first three, is a classic hero's journey, where you have Luke Skywalker, who is, you know, in this world that's kind of comfortable that he's grown up in, but there's something that's not quite right. There's some yearning, there's some longing. And then all of a sudden his world gets upended. He discovers some truth about himself, has to go off into this journey to explore that truth. He has the wise guide, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's another archetype, or Gandalf or Dumbledore. That's another example of an archetype, the wise guide. And he goes off into mystery in the middle of the desert and basically has all of these adventures and has to discover himself and trust his own strength, his own power. And once he's done that, then he can be the hero. And it's a classic hero's journey. So that's a little bit of concreteness about archetypes.
Yeah. All right. So basically, let me sum it up a little bit. So we talked about how risk is the antidote to being in that place of fear and scarcity and jealousy and perfectionism. But we need courage in order to take risks. So that's why we want to talk about invoking an archetype. So there are different ways to think about it. Oh, I was about to sneeze. The one who doesn't sneeze. I just invoked the archetype of the one who doesn't sneeze.
Oh, the perfect beauty.
Yes.
The flawless woman that men fawn over.
So anyway, that kind of can get you thinking about a potential archetype that you might want to call on. And so basically in another video, I'll talk more about how to invoke an archetype, how to incarnate it and embody it and bring that energy down into your being so that you are literally embodying it.
Yeah, well, that really, you're studying the artist's way. So that's what art is all about, is finding the universality in your personal experiences and expressing them, or taking things that are universal patterns and bringing them into a form of personal expression. So really art is very much about, very much connected with the archetypal. It very much shares the same vocabulary, the same vernacular as the archetype.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
The misunderstood artist, the starving artist, you know, that's a huge archetype. The starving artist that's misunderstood and then dies and becomes famous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's what my whole book, The Bohemian Life, is about. It's the archetype of the Bohemian artist. So anyway, yes, we will talk more about that, about invoking the archetype, and then we'll go on to actually talking about taking risks. But since David here has
That's me.
manifested, what, a week in the mountains with no internet, no television, no cell phone.
5 days.
5 days. Yeah. So
Before we even started this program, that was on the calendar 6 months ago.
So he is going to enjoy himself and therefore will not be in the next few videos. Yes, we will miss you, David. But the show must go on. So since this is going to be your last video for at least 5 days, because you'll be in the mountains for 5 days, do you want to share any other wisdom you have about incarnating an archetype?
Don't worry, be happy.
Yeah.
That's not the wisdom you had in mind.
I was thinking something with a little more substance.
Incarnating an archetype. No.
Okay.
I don't. I really thought deeply there, and I can't think of anything I wanted to say that didn't lead into another like half an hour, 45-minute conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was gathering, was that to really go into how to invoke an archetype is going to be another video. I just thought I'd give you the opportunity, but right. I agree. It's a pretty deep topic. So stay tuned. That will be the topic of the next video. And because this is such a rich subject, there's a good chance that we will come back to it at some point in the program before we reach the end of the 12 weeks. And so I'm sure David will have an opportunity to say more about archetypes and this archetypal level of consciousness.
More about archetypes and the archetypical level of consciousness. Holy shit, that was synchronistic. You're right.
All right. So, as
I'm the jester. That's one of the archetypes I relate to.
Yes. So what's my archetype? I sort of have, especially with this new lighting, I have this sort of Sleeping Beauty look to me. That kind of like, what do you think? Aurora, Sleeping Beauty.
The unattainable perfection that men dream about but never obtain.
Okay. All righty. I'll take it.
All right.
Okay. So, as always, thank you for subscribing and sharing on your social media and with your friends and family. Please ring the bell for notifications. Click like on this video and put your comments in the comment section below and you will win a prize, an answer from me.
Cool. It will be a surprise answer, a surprise prize answer, except we told you would be an answer. So it won't be as much as a surprise as it would have been if we kept our mouth shut. We didn't keep our mouth shut. So now you know. So now maybe you'll leave a comment. And if you don't leave a comment, then nothing's going to happen. So whatever you do is what you are going to do. So be yourself.
Okay. All righty. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.